Donald Trump did an interview on Meet the Press with Kristen Welker on NBC News. It was Kristen Welker's debut edition on Meet the Press, and a horrible interview to start with. It was not conducted correctly, as we see so consistently with these Trump interviews. If you're going to do it, there are only a few ways to do it responsibly, and you have to be ready to push back and not allow the audience to be fed kind of in an unfiltered manner the lies that Trump is going to tell because of how dangerous so many of them are. And while Kristen Welker tried to push back, it wasn't at the magnitude that would be necessary to make this an appropriate and responsible platforming of Trump. And so that's my general criticism of the interview. But then a bunch of interesting moments came from it, one of them being Trump's reaction to questions about abortion rights. And he clearly, as many Republicans are starting to, realizes how much of a political liability the subject is and desperately did not want to give a specific stance on the subject of abortion rights. Take a look at this.
On this election,
yeah,
a very clear sense of where
I think
you stand on this.
I think they're all going to like me. I think both sides are going to like me.
What's
going to have to happen is you're going to have to listen. You're asking me a question. What's going to happen is you're going to come up with a number of weeks or months. You're going to come up with a number that's going to make people happy, because 92% of the Democrats don't want to see abortion after a certain period of time.
If a federal ban landed on your desk, if you were reelected, would you sign it at 15
Are you
weeks?
talking about a complete ban?
A ban at 15 weeks?
Well, people are starting to think of 15 weeks. That seems to be a number that people are talking about right now.
Would you sign that?
I would sit down with both sides and I'd negotiate something, and we'll end up with peace on that issue for the first time in 52 years. I'm not going to say I would or I wouldn't. I mean, DeSantis is willing to sign a 5-week and 6-week ban.
Would you support that? You think that
I think what he did is a terrible thing and a terrible mistake. But we'll come up with a number. But at the same time, Democrats.
And then he goes on to the typical Democrats want abortion on demand until the 9th month of pregnancy and afterwards, which is not the case. And recently I've done multiple segments extensively talking about the specifics of why that's not the case. But it's the way you distract from your unpopular stance on abortion rights. Well, we can't even figure it out at this point in time, but his record being him being in part responsible for the overturning of Roe v. Wade with the justices he was able to get onto the Supreme Court. And so to distract from that, a lot of Republicans, knowing their own positions are unpopular, say this nonsense about the Democratic Party position to try to just muddy the waters a little bit. And so there, he was willing to say he's against DeSantis' 6-week ban, but the rest of his response was, I would do something that is the right number of weeks and makes everyone happy and makes everyone at peace with the issue. I think you could pretty much give that response to every single subject and it not mean anything. What are you going to do on healthcare? I'm going to sit down, negotiate, get the right system and make everyone happy, and we're going to put that issue to rest. Yeah, that doesn't do anything for anyone. My goodness. And it just continues. The squirming out of answering the question is stunning.
Government impose any abortion restrictions, or should it be completely left up to the states?
No, I don't think you should be allowed to have abortions well into a pregnancy.
But what about the question I just asked you?
No, we're going to agree to a number of weeks or months or however you want to define it. And both sides are going to come together, and both sides, and this is a big statement, both sides will come together, and for the first time in 52 years, you'll have an issue that we can put behind us.
At the federal level?
It could be state or it could be federal. I don't frankly care.
So you're not committed to
What does that even mean? At the federal level, it could be state or federal. You're going to dictate state laws, or just very incoherent. And it comes from not because he doesn't probably know how he feels, but because he knows a little bit how the American people feel, which is to say they're against his party's policies that are being implemented across the country and against the overturning of Roe v. Wade. The majority of Americans are. And so him trying to protect himself politically leads him to that weird, wiggly, trying to slip out of the answer type response. And it's indicative of the moment we're in it, with the strong support for abortion rights, which I guess is a positive to see that reflected, negative that we have such dishonest individuals who can't just be clear about where they stand and maybe just adopt better positions on their stance. And then another recent speech we talked about earlier in today's show, he does it again.
Right up until the moment of birth. And again, in some cases you have after birth, it's just murder. After birth. And you have, in some cases, legislation.
So that's the talking point that's just not at all based in fact, but this is more the bizarre, vague promise on the issue.
Gave people representing us an incredible power to do something that's really a fantastic thing if we can do this, and we're gonna get it done. And you all know what I mean. Before the gay people.
What does that mean? What is your policy stance on the subject of abortion rights? We're going to get it done, and you know what I mean, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be the right number for the right people, and everyone's going to be happy. Strange. But interestingly, more than what Trump is dealing with when it comes to this subject, which again, I say the struggle, I guess, is positive to see because it means they're aware of the opposition from the country to their policies and stances on the subject, but still aggravating to watch. Pence is taking a different stance. Pence is trying to draw a contrast between him and his former boss on the subject, such as this.
Well, let me take issue with a premise in your question.
Go ahead.
If I can. I mean, Donald Trump actually blamed losses in the midterm elections on us overturning Roe versus Wade. You know, when I look at the midterm elections, it was candidates that were focused on the future did very well. Candidates who were focused on the past, and many candidates he endorsed that were relitigating the last election, did not fare well, including in states that we should have done well. So I honestly, I take a different view of 2022 than my former running mate does, and I think the facts speak for themselves. That being
so, it is accurate to say that election deniers did very poorly. That's who he's referring to, the hardcore Trump-endorsed election deniers, and people who were marked as kind of the extreme MAGA part of the party did do pretty poorly in the 2022 midterms, and that did play a role in the underwhelming outcome for the GOP in the midterms. But the other factor that was huge was abortion rights, and it was a backlash to the overturning of Roe v. Wade and some of the policies that has started to be implemented. And 27% of people said in exit polls that abortion rights was their top issue for voting. 27%, massive. And so he's ignoring one of the factors because, again, he doesn't want to deal with the fact that his view is being rejected largely by the country. And we'll see how that goes for him. One more Mike Pence moment during a recent speech.
forward. It's a 15-week minimum ban. I believe it's an idea whose time has come. Why would we leave unborn babies in California and Illinois and New York to the devices of liberal state legislatures and liberal governors? We need to stand for the unborn all across America. And as your president, I promise you'll have a champion for life in the Oval Office.
It is funny that, not funny, it's contradictory, it's wild, that the whole line from the Republican Party, for as long as Roe v. Wade existed, or the conservative movement, pro-life movement, was we have to send it back to the states. This is a states' rights issue. States should decide on this issue. And then it gets overturned, and then it's actually, let's ban abortion federally. And it's a reminder of the principles never actually stand. It's just as long as they're politically advantageous. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show and get a bonus show on the weekends, you can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That's lukebeasleyshow.com/membership, and there's a link in the description.